Hi everyone, Julie here with Paisleys and Polka Dots, and in this video I am going to be painting this chicken you see here, and it's not really going to be a tutorial per se, but just thought you'd like to paint along with me and see how I put this all together and how I do it. So one of the first things I want to say is that when you have a base like this, you don't want to get any paint in the slot right here because then it might not fit. So if your chicken doesn't fit together like so, then you want to take like a nail file like this, and any paint that you get in there, you want to sand it out. Okay, and a regular emery board nail file works great for that. But one of the also important things is when these are laser cut, there is a front and a back to these. Usually you can tell the front sides because you can usually see a little bit of a pin burn where the laser stops and starts. When the beam goes through the wood, it gets smaller. So on the back side, on this side, your piece, this one it's going to fit just because I made it the slot a little bit bigger, but sometimes on the back side your pieces won't fit together. So if you have trouble with your pieces fitting together, flip your base over and try it from the opposite side. It might fit better. Okay, and if that doesn't work, then you can use your little emery board. Wood swells, the weather affects it, so even when we're cutting, sometimes it cuts tighter than other times. We don't know why that happens, but that's just a little bit of knowledge on fitting the pieces together. Okay, so I'm going to crackle paint this. So I've already got a moist brush. You don't want any water in your brush, so have a paper towel nearby. Wet your brush though before you start, and then I'm going to base coat this, and I am using Spice Brown. I'm going to crackle paint this chicken. So give your paint a good shake and pour it out on a paper plate. I use these paint palette pads, and I like to go around the sides of my wood first. Just dab your brush into the paint, and you don't want a lot of paint on your brush, so just going to go around the sides here. And if you get too much on the front, then you can just clean it up with your brush like so. And you want, like I said, you want to go all the way around the outside first. When you're crackle painting, you don't have to really worry too much about your base coating because it's going to get covered up. So it's not, you don't need to be too particular, but you don't want to, less is more on your brush. Like you don't want to have too much paint on your brush, because if you have too much paint, then it just gobs onto your piece and then it just doesn't look good. So I only, if your paint is going way up into your bristles here, you're using way too much paint. Your paint needs to stay down in the bottom section of your brush. You can use foam brushes if you want. I don't particularly like foam brushes. There's also some other videos that I have on painting tutorials where I use makeup sponges in some cases. I like to use those. They're quite good for smaller pieces. But I typically like to use this size brush, which is it's a 3/4 inch. I think they call it a wash brush. And this is my go-to brush. So as I go around, I'm just cleaning up the edges. Okay, and then we're going to go around all the way around this piece. Okay, now that I've gone around all the outside edge, I'm not going to paint these portions up here because his little, whatever you call that thing, I don't know what you call it, the top of his head and his little, these two are going to be red, and then his beak is going to be a straw color. So I am not going to paint those at this time. So, and this is where his head overlay piece goes. So I don't need to paint in there either. Okay, so now we're going to come back and we are going to, I'm going to try and use long strokes. Now it's okay if you go into this area because it's going to get covered up by that. Okay, so I'm going to try to use long strokes. And again, I don't have a ton of paint on my brush. As you can see, I'm giving it like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch up, 1/4 of an inch up. It just makes your painting a lot nicer. And I try to use long strokes. Now, one of the other things is you don't want to paint all the way down on this piece that's going to fit in the slots, because if you get too much paint on here, again, it's not going to fit into your base. So you want to stay away from that little bottom edge there and try not to get too much paint on it. And as you're painting, if you get any on the edges, then you want to definitely clean those up. You don't want to have gobs of paint hanging over the edge of your piece of wood. You always want to try and paint in the same direction. If you don't paint in the same direction, if you go this way to try and not get it on the edges, and you paint all these different directions like this, then you want to kind of take your brush and smooth it out one last time before you move on to the other section. Okay, so there, I have my base coat all done, and I'm going to set this aside to dry, and we'll go around these other pieces right here. So this is the wing, and this is where your cross stitch piece is going to go over. You're going to put your cross stitch piece over the top of this, but it layers together to make definition between the two. And like I said, I'm not being too particular going around the outside edges, or one coat of paint is sufficient on this because we are going to crackle paint it. And so there are other coats of paint going over it, so it doesn't matter too much. And I typically like to hold my piece in my hand. I don't typically set it down like this. I don't know why. You can, however it's most comfortable for you. But I tend to hold mine so that if I do get paint on the edge, then I can easily clean it up. And I need a little bit more paint here. It just seems to be easier for me if I'm holding my piece in my hands like this but I always say, do what works for you and what's easiest for you. See how I'm painting this way? And then I'll go back and I'll make long strokes like that. And then I'll clean up my edges in case I have any gobs of paint. I don't know if that's the correct word, but that's what I say, gobs of paint. Okay, let's go on to this one. And I'm not going to paint in the center of this because it's going to get covered up, so I don't have to paint that. This piece actually comes together pretty quickly. There's some drying time in between, so like the crackle paint, once we put on the crackle paint, it takes a little bit of time to dry, and you want to make sure that that crackle medium really dries good before going on to the next step. So I'm just going to continue around the outside edge here, and so it's all covered. You could leave it black too, because once you crackle paint it and then you put the top coat on, it would crack through and just have that dark color underneath. So, but I do want to paint this part right here. Try to stay away from that center little notch or hole so that I don't get any paint in it. If you do, you can just kind of, clean it up with your brush. Now this little piece, that little circle right there is where his eye's supposed to be. So it's just etched in there for you. It will probably disappear by the time we get the layer on. So you can mark it in between layers with like a pen or something so you don't lose that. Or you can just eyeball it when you get to the top coat. And we're going to do that by using the end of the paintbrush, dipping it into some paint. Okay, so now we're going to go on to, I'm going to clean my brush here. And then we're going to go on to painting the top part and his beak. I do have a basin, big, it's well loved, as you can see, but it has some grooves in the bottom of it that really clean my brush well, so I really love this bucket. We're going to paint his beak. I'm using Golden Straw by Americana. And a lot of the colors, one of the biggest things that everybody reaches out to me for is saying they cannot find the colors. If you're a crafter working with paper, I always say take your paper to the craft store with you and kind of match up the colors. But all of the manufacturers have websites like Americana. I think it's done by Plaid or Deco Art Plaid. And they have all the paints online that you can purchase and order them online. And yes, you have to pay for shipping, but at least you can find the colors that you want. Here's a little technique. If you haven't watched the other videos, you can use a piece of tape. I like to use blue tape, painter's tape, and I'll tape it down. And that way, when I'm painting something like his little beak here, I don't want it to move, I can tape it down. And it'll stay in place so I can paint it. Clean up the sides. Okay, and then I also want to paint the sides of the beak up here as on the base piece as well. Okay, and you do want to probably paint 2 coats because we're not going to crackle paint these. So I do want to put on 2 coats of paint. And I'm going to, if you're impatient like me, you can get out your embossing gun or heat gun and dry it. Makes it quick. Okay, that's probably going to be good on that one. And then I'll give this one another coat too. Always check to make sure you are painting also the correct side of the wood. So I always like to tell everyone to lay out all of their pieces onto the chicken so you can kind of get a visual of how everything is supposed to go together before you start painting. And that way you'll know that your base fits, you'll know that all the pieces, how all the pieces go together, and then you won't be accidentally painting the wrong sides and wasting time that you don't have to waste. So, okay, now I'm going to paint the these two. Now, the top coat's going to be red, but I already tested, and this dark brown does not show through on the red because they're both a deep color. So I'm going to paint that black. Now, you can go with a lighter color, so I made this little test piece right here. So this right here is, this side of the board has black under it. This side of the board has white under it. So you can see what the differences are and how they look once they're cracked. So it shows through better with the black. Like I said, I had already tried the brown. And then this side is actually a lighter brown. So you can see what using a lighter color also works like. Okay? So I'm gonna paint the red part right here black. And again, I don't need to paint in this section here because this is going to overlay over the top. So I didn't really need to paint that black. I needed to paint it whatever color the top of this is going to be. Actually, that part needs to be brown because that's going to go like that, and then we're going to crackle over the top. So that should be painted brown. And then let's do this one down over here. And I'm just painting enough so that I know that when I put this over the top, it's going to cover it. Okay, so that's all done. We're gonna move on, make sure that this piece is gonna still be drying so we can go on to the crackle medium for the other pieces, because I think they're probably, just the head here probably isn't dry enough. The rest of the pieces seem to be dry, so I'll start with those. So the crackle medium that I use is by Folk Art. I do give this a good shake. I don't know if it needs to be shook, but I do just in case, because there's, when I pick it up, there seems to be some sediment on the bottom. So I want to make sure that whatever this is in the stuff that makes it crack, I want to be sure that it's in there. So one of the things that I have had comments on is people say their piece didn't crack. You do have to put this on a little heavy. Like it's not real thick, so you kind of want to use, I mean, again, you don't want to load it up on your brush, but you want to actually put it on the wood kind of thick. So don't spread it out as much as you would probably spread out the paint. Hopefully that makes sense. And as you can see, I've kind of got it on the front part of the wood here, and I'm just going to leave it because I think it'll help just add to the front when I go over it. So okay, so I just did the edges on that. And then, so now I'm gonna wanna paint whatever way, I don't know if it makes a difference on the crackle, but it makes a difference on the top coat as to which direction you're gonna paint. But I'm actually gonna paint this the sideways. On his body, I'm gonna go vertical up and down. This one I'm gonna go horizontal. So as you can see, I don't know if you can tell, like I'm putting on a really generous coat. So the heavier the coat of crackle that you put on, the more the paint is going to crack for you. You don't want a light coat. You want a heavy coat. Okay, so it looks kind of like that. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but it is a pretty heavy coat. And I do got some on the edges here, so I'm going to clean these up. I'm going to go around the edges of this one. The edges don't need to be as heavy as the top. So just because I mean, you don't want it dripping off your pieces of wood either. So you just quickly go around the edge. Okay, I hold this in the palm of my hand like this. And again, I'm just kind of, you can see how much I have on here. So I have to reload quite a bit because I'm putting heavier coats on. And then try to smooth them out and make long strokes. Unless you like them broken up, because that's the way it's going to come out. That's the way it's going to kind of crack. Now see how I'm going sideways like this? And then I want to, again, go back and make long strokes. And clean up any edges if you have any of it seeping over the edge. The base looks good, so I can put it on here. And this, I think, probably takes about an hour to dry. So you're going to want to leave it set. Like I said, this is very important, as you want this coat to be fully dry before you go on to the next step. Can you, if I turn, can you kind of see that? Hopefully you can see a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside. Let's see, is this one, I think this one's pretty dry now. I might need a little bit more crackle medium here. And I always do use a palette. I don't put my paint directly onto my wood, only because I just don't want a lot of paint. I don't want to use too much paint on my wood. So I always use either a paper plate or like this palette pad, something to put my paint on instead of directly putting paint onto the piece of wood. I think your painting comes out nicer if you use a plate or something to put your paint on. Okay, there we go. The head's now done. And like I said, I'm not going to crackle paint his little beak. We're just going to sand that. Let's see if the body's all finished. Yep, it looks dry. So we're not going to want to put any crackle on here. We're just going to want to go around the outside edges all the way around, except the yellow beak. So we are going to set this aside. We're going to let it dry, and then I will come back, and then we're going to paint the top coat on it, okay? Okay, now that we have the base coat and the crackle medium all dry, we are going to put on the top coat for our chicken here. And I'm going to be using white for his body here, or her body, I don't know. So I'm going to pour out some white paint, and then when you crackle paint, you only want to put down the paint one time. So you do want to load up your brush just a bit heavier. The heavier the paint, the heavier the crackle. The lighter the paint, the less it will crack. And when you're painting, you want to decide which way your crackle will go. So if you paint vertically, your cracks are going to go vertically. If you paint horizontally, your cracks are going to go horizontal. So you need to make a decision as to which way you want to go, and you need to be consistent with that. So I'm going to start up here with this black portion, and once you put it down, you want to try not to go back over it, because you will pull it back up. So you want to go in one slope here. So, and I can kind of go that way. You can kind of lightly, actually I should have started with the sides. So I'm gonna try and not, it's easier to go around the sides first and then do the top part, just like we did the base coat. Kind of went a little backwards there. So, but it's okay, we're gonna fix it. And if you don't want to get too much paint on the front of your wood, you can always paint from, hold it from the back side and paint this direction. That way, if you got any over, it'll just go onto the back side of your wood. Okay, so that's always an option too. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around the whole entire chicken. But do you see how I just went over all that section and see how it's cracking like it is? Okay, now if I was to, this paint is probably dry enough, but if I was to go back over it, it would start pulling up that paint. So you want to make sure that you only put down one coat of paint. So if you don't have your brush loaded up enough, you might not have as good of coverage in one spot versus another, but it's all part of the look. It's supposed to look weathered and distressed, so it's okay if the paint isn't perfect. That's just part of the distressed look of the crackle painting. Okay, so as you can see, even the sides here have already started to crack along the edge. So, okay, I totally messed up, and I painted, this should have been red. So I completely messed up on that. So I'm going to have to, what I would do in this case is I will sand that portion down with some heavy grit sandpaper, and then I'm going to have to repaint it and fix it back up. So there's nothing, I guess it's kind of good that it happened, because these things happen and we have to fix them, and it's not a big deal. I can just go back and sand it down and then start over in that little section. So that's what I'll do. But see how I'm not trying to go over the top of this a second time. I'm just making long strokes. You can see how it's starting to crack. And I'm painting vertical strokes so that my cracks will go vertically. Now, if you do get too much paint or you need to go over it a little bit, sometimes you can lightly, see how, like, if I'm going to do this right here in the center because I know it's going to be covered up. So when you go over it, see, this has already started to dry too much, so it's going to actually cover up. But like this section right here, see how if you paint on there, it'll start pulling it up. So if you like that look, you can go over it. Some people like the heavy distressing, so that's okay too. It's all in what you want. It's your piece. It's your project, and you get to paint it how you like it. That's the nice thing about being able to paint it yourself, is you get to choose your own style and your own look. Okay, so I'm gonna go on his little feathers here. And then we're gonna sand when it's all dry. So see how like there's some lighter sections, like these are heavier and these are lighter. So that's where I have the paint a little heavier. This is where the paint's a little bit lighter. But in the end, when you get done sanding it, it all just kind of comes together. So this, again, this is supposed to be red. So I'm going to continue on with my other parts while this is drying, and then I'll go back and sand this down and fix it. So I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to go on to these pieces. Now this one is supposed to be painted a brown, so the base is also going to be white, so I can go ahead and do this one. And so your normal reaction is to paint this going this way, which you can if you want your chicken to have, so when it's laying on here, it's going to be at an angle. So when it's laying on here, you can decide, because it goes like about this way, you can decide, do you want it to go that way so that you have a contrast from up and down. So I actually think I will do that. I think I want it to go the other direction. So let's try that. Just so that I have a difference of contrast, or different texture, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, it's up to you. However you want to do it. But I think I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to try it. Like I said, this is a paint with me, so everything's not going to be perfect. You're going to see how not everything works out when I do it as well, like this little boo-boo that I have here. So let's see, I'm going to wash my brush out, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint the head with the lighter brown. So I just use white on the body here, just plain white. White. You can use an ivory too if you want something that's, if you have a stitch that's a little bit more of a off-white or ivory color, you can use ivory. That would work well too. It kind of takes on a not such a stark white effect anyway because of the dark under color. Okay, so this color I'm using Cocoa by Americana, and I thought it would match the stitch that I'm going to put on this well, so this is the color that I am using. And remember how I said the little etched line would probably be covered up by the time we were done? It's not. I can actually still see it in there. So you're gonna be able to still see that line. Can you still see the little etched line right there? You can see how my piece is starting to crack. I couldn't get this color to crack real well when I did a sample, so we'll see how it turns out. It's cracking pretty good now. So maybe I didn't have a heavy enough coat of the crackle medium on the little sample piece that I had painted. It was this one. It was the back side. So you can see right here how it really didn't crack on this light, on the color. So I don't know. Like, it's all trial and error sometimes, but I just think I didn't have enough crackle medium on it. Okay, so let's see, is this dry enough? I think it probably is. So I can either stop the video or I can just keep going and show you guys how I fix an error. So I'm gonna take a heavier piece of sandpaper. This is a 150 grit. I'm just gonna take a little piece and I'm going to sand this down. And I probably don't need to get all of the paint off, but I need to sand it down enough that I'm taking some of the color off so that it'll cover well again. And it is black, so it's not going to be a problem to cover it anyway. Okay, so I sanded that down. Let me get some of this off my table here because I don't want the dust. Okay, push that into the trash can there. Okay, so let me paint it black again. And I'm not going to sand down the sides. I'm just going to leave those and I'm going to paint over them again. So see, even I goof, not paying attention. Brain is elsewhere. There's no right or wrong. We make little mistakes and then we just fix them. But it all works out in the end. And I always say so many people like finish a project and they're like, but it doesn't look like yours. And it's like, well, just wait. When you get it away from mine and you set it aside, then I say the little painting fairy comes along and you look at it the next day after you get your stitch all on it and it's all done and it looks lovely and beautiful and you'll be so proud of yourself that you painted it. Okay, I think I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to dry this. Okay. And I also found that when I heat it like that and I put the crackle medium on, it doesn't go on as thick or it tends to dry too quickly and then doesn't crack as well. So I do want to let this cool down just a little bit before I put on the crackle medium. And from sanding it down, it's left, it's got some texture to it. So it might look really cool when I'm all done, I hope. Okay, I'm going to recoat the sides. So we got the crackle medium back on. I'm gonna let this dry and we're back at the starting point. See, that wasn't too big of a detour to fix. And I'll come back and we will paint the red over the top. It's all dry and I'm ready to paint the red over the top. And I'm going to be using a Santa red. If you want a deeper, more of a barn red, I would recommend using Tomty red by Delta. The Santa red is by Americana. And this one's more of a deep true red. And I think it'll match the stitch best. So this is the color that I'm going to use. I had gotten that little speck of white there, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's all going to be part of the look. Okay, now I'm going to paint the top part. And this part over here. Okay, so you can see how the red is starting to crack right there. And I noticed with the red, it doesn't crack a whole lot. Not sure why, but it doesn't show as much as the white. The white really cracks really nicely. So, but it is cracking. It just doesn't show as well. I think because the colors aren't as contrast. There's not as much contrast. But you can see how you've got some big cracks going there and some little cracking going on over here. So, okay, so we are done with the chicken, and I think some of these pieces are dry enough that we can start sanding them. So when sanding, I use a 150 grit, and I'll cut down a big sheet like this. I just cut them. Cut a section off, and I fold it up. Like so. And I'm going to set this aside since it's still dry and I don't want to get a bunch of sawdust on it. And I'll take my piece. Normally I'll do this over a trash can or something, but since I'm videoing this for you, I'm going to do it right here onto my paper. And I go around the outside edge and just kind of sand away. You can even do, I'm on the top as well. And some of that brown comes through on the underneath. If you want a lot of shading, you can use a heavier grit sandpaper. So that's what it looks like there. And here's, let's see, let's go around this one. And I'm pressing pretty hard. I'm not using a light hand at all. I'm really getting in there and roughing up those edges. And you always want to sand the same way that your crackle's going. So if your crackle's going sideways or horizontally, you want to sand horizontally. You don't want to be sanding this direction. Okay, let's see if our chicken is dry over here. It's not quite dry over here, so we're gonna have to wait a little bit on him. Let's see if this one's dry enough. You want to be sure that it's really dry. You don't want to be pulling up your wet paint at all. Feel like I pulled it up a little bit there. So this one's probably not dry enough, quite dry enough either. So I'm going to let these dry a little bit more. Oh, we definitely want to sand our little beak here. So give that a sand too. Okay. You can sand as heavy or as light as you want. I think I can go along the white part right here. And I don't worry too much about getting in the little cracks and crevices. I just kind of take the sandpaper and kind of, if it doesn't get all the way in there, it's okay. It doesn't, not every little nook and cranny has to be sanded. But I definitely like how the edges, the dark comes through on the edges, and I really like that. So Okay, let's see. I think it's dry. Okay, so this is gonna go like this. Oh, he's turning out so cute. He, she, it, chicken. Okay. Okay, all I have to do is sand. Uh-oh. I painted that white and that should have been brown right here. So let's see. Should I fix it or should I just leave it? I think I'm going to go and I'm going to paint it brown. And so now that this is dry, it's probably going to cover up my crackle, but we'll just go with it. Because I do want it to be the same color. And it's on the side, so it's not going to matter too much. But I want the colors to blend. So I need to do this part right here too. Okay, that's good enough. Alrighty, I think I'll take my heat gun to this so I can get it dry. All right, so now I just need to sand his little head and see how I've got black coming through on that, along with some of the lighter wood showing too. Sanding is optional, but I think it really adds to the piece and it adds to that distressed look. And then there's one more thing that you can do if you choose, if you like that really heavy distressed look. Okay, I've got a mess going on here now. See if I can get rid of some of this into the trash can here. Like I said, I usually do my sanding over the trash can so that it's not going all over my desk and tabletop here. Okay, so that's going to go on there like that, and the beak's going to go on right here. And these two pieces are going to go like this, and this will go in here like this. Okay, he's turning out so cute. Okay, so the if you want to dot the eye, I can still see the little etching right there. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I can see it where I'm at. So I'm going to put out fresh. You want a fresh puddle of paint to dip into. Probably didn't need that much, just for an eyeball. But you can kind of look at the size of the eye and find the bottom of one of your brushes or a pointed object that will make about that size. So the way you do it is just dip it in and try it on a piece of paper. So like I can dip it on here and see that's probably about the size that I want compared to the eye that's sitting there. So if you want it to be the same size, you have to dip it back into the paint again. And if you don't, then they're going to be different sizes. So always if you dot two eyes, then you want to dot one, dip back into the paint. Otherwise, if you dot it a second time, then you're going to get a smaller eye. Okay, so let's dip back into the paint, and I'm going to put his, there we go. There he has an eye now. and definitely let that dry. It takes a little bit of time to dry because it's kind of like a puddle of paint. And then if you want, you can take like a little Q-tip and you can put a little white highlight in it if you want. That's always a nice little touch. But right now I think, oh, one other thing that I wanted to show you is an option. If you like a lot of distressing, you can use, this is Tim Holtz Distress ink, and it's an ink pad. Mine is a very well loved and worn. It's probably back from my scrapbooking days, if any of you scrapbooked. And let me find a sponge. So it's really dry. So if you just go out and purchase one of these, it's going to be really, really wet, and it's probably going to be too heavy for you. So either, I hate to tell you to let it dry out, or the other option is when you dip your sponge into it, like you're going to do this, then blend it out on a piece of paper before you actually put it onto your chicken. So I would recommend trying it on the back side, like this. And so you're going to brush this ink on with just your makeup sponge. I tend to use the heavier side of the makeup sponge because you have more control than this flimsy side on this one. So, and you can brush on as much ink as you want, like so. Okay, so I don't think I want to do it around all of it, but I think I would like to add a little bit of distressing on some of the wing and some of the white body. So I'm just lightly brushing. The heavier you brush, of course, the heavier the ink's going to go on. And I just want a light. So I'm just kind of brushing a little bit of ink on. See how it kind of darkens the edge. Maybe I'll do it on this, but I'm going to be very careful because I do not want to mess up my eyeball there. And you can get it heavier, like on, to add some shading, like down in the little peaks down here. Get a little heavier on those edges, just to add a little bit of shading in. Okay, and I can do it, well, maybe I'll go around the whole thing and do some on his beak. It's all in how much you want. You can even do this side. Okay, I don't really think it'll show on this, so I don't really think I need to go around that, but I'll add a little bit just in case. Quick and easy step. Just brush it on. So here's my chicken. It's all done and painted. So let me get some, I'm gonna put the ink away. I am going to use, I use tacky glue to put my wood together, but on some of the larger pieces, when you use tacky glue, it tends to want to lift. So you can either use little tiny clamps. Let me see if I have some. There they are. I'll use little tiny clamps like this to hold it together, but I might not be able to get them all the way onto the, oh, did I go around this with ink? I don't think I did. Let me ink this part right here. So you can clamp it on, or you can use a quick set glue. I'll show you what I use as soon as I add some ink to this one. This one's going to get covered up, so I guess it really doesn't matter, but just for when if you want to switch out your pieces, you can use magnets, and just in case you want to do that, then it will look prettier when there's nothing on it if we ink it. Okay, so I'm going to attach this to this first and get any of the sanding off. I'll put that aside for the moment. Okay, so I use this glue. It's called Star Bond Thick. And as you can see, I got something stuck to all the outside of it. And this is like super glue for wood. So you don't need to use a whole lot. And it sets up almost immediately. So, and it kind of spreads really easily as well. So you don't need to use a lot, and it sets up really fast. So when you use this glue, the pieces don't pull away because it sets up so quickly. And it's called Star Bond Thick. And it works really good, but you do not want to get it on your fingers, and it does set up pretty quickly. So you have to be pretty quick with using it. And sometimes it sets up really, really fast, and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm still learning with it because I haven't used it that much. But you definitely do not want to get it on your fingers because it will glue them together. It is like super glue for wood. Okay, so that's kind of already stuck and set. So you want to make sure that when you put your pieces together, they are positioned the way you want them because it sets up almost immediately. All right, so we're going to figure out which way we want this. And see, I should have put this down, but this is going to get covered up. So it's not really going to matter how this goes on here. But I would have liked this turned a little bit. So had I have used the tacky glue, I would have been able to switch that. So these are the kind of things you have to think about when using a quick set glue like that. But like I said, that's going to be covered up, and I wanted this to be different than this one. I wanted the contrast. So I'm going to glue this piece down, and I'm going to be careful not to touch my eye because it is still drying. So that's about how much glue I put on. And kind of feel with your fingers on the side to make sure it's lined up. And kind of push it down just for a second. Okay. And then put just a little bit on this one. See, I only need a little bit in the center there. And I'll press it down for a minute. Give it a firm press. Okay. And then we'll glue this one down. I'm going to make sure that the base, let's make sure the base fits, and it does. So we can figure out how far. I plan to, I want to take a, let me grab it here. Okay, I'm still working on my stitch and putting it together. But I plan to take a piece of raffia like this and put it down here so it'll look like hay, grain, or grass, whatever's in their little nest. And then I'll put the stitch next to it. So I want to leave just a little bit of room that I can get this underneath here. So I don't want to put it too close to the bottom. I want to have a little gap in there. So let's glue this on. Okay, that's about how much I use. And we're gonna glue it on. Make sure you have the angle set right. His wing. I kind of line it up here with this slope here. And you do want to make sure that this circle is kind of, I'm going to center it in the center of this, okay? Because that's kind of the center of the chicken. Okay. So there. And I think the eye is dry enough that we can put a little white highlight in there. Okay, so I would use what's called a stylus, and it's just got a really tiny pointed end. If I don't want it, I'm going to try it on my paper here first, see how that dot is, and that looks pretty good, but if you wanted it smaller, just dot it again. I always like to test my dots, make sure the size is going to be correct. And in order to steady my hand, I usually will hold it and then dot it on so that I don't mess up. You don't want it in the center of the eye, you kind of want it up toward the top. You don't want to put it directly in the center. Okay, so there we go. And he's finished. She's finished. I think it's a hen, right? Yeah, chickens lay eggs, so yeah, it's a girl. There we go. And she's so cute. Okay, so here's my stitch. I did not stitch, this was done by one of my model stitchers, Peggy, and it turned out really pretty. So I'm still working on it. So I covered a piece with fabric. I think I'm going to use this one. And then I cut out this scallop here out of felt. And I think I'm going to back that. And then I backed the stitched piece. This is normally, Priscilla and Chelsea did this on black, but I had her stitch it on a light brown or taupe color. And then I backed it with this trim. And then I'm going to put it on here like that. And then this will go on the chicken like so. Now, if you want to protect your wood, you can spray it with a clear, I've got paint right here, so I don't want to put the chicken over the top of that. You can spray it with a clear matte spray. I like matte because I don't want my piece to be shiny. So if you like shiny, you can use a gloss, but I typically like non-shine. I would recommend not having any paint next to your stitch the way I do right now, but I wanted to show you how cute it was going to look. And then this is going to go here, and I'm going to cut these ends so it doesn't look like a bow, and it just looks like strands of grass. So that's the way it will look, and it came out super cute. So I hope you enjoyed painting along with me. If you have questions, you can put them down in the comment box. I'll do my best to answer them for you, or you can reach out to me at info@paisleysanpolkadots.com, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Okay, thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.